So Samsung has just announced the new Galaxy Watch Ultra. They've announced the pricing and availability of the Galaxy Ring, as well as the Galaxy Watch 7. In this video, I'm going to dive through all of the new features of all three of those things, pricing, technical details, how it differs from the competition, and plenty more. So we're going to get straight into it with the Galaxy Ring. This is something they announced a year ago and is now finally for sale. So obviously the price at first up at $399 US, and notably, most importantly, no subscription. Samsung made a point of calling that out in the middle of the keynote.
All this with no subscription.
I'd say that's a pretty big deal compared to all their competitors which have subscriptions. The outer casing of the Galaxy Ring is titanium, which I think we already knew, and it comes in a bunch of sizes from basically a size 5 up to a size 13. The way it works is that when you order the Galaxy Ring, you get a little package of a bunch of sizing rings. These are basically just fake plastic rings for all the different sizes, so you can figure out which ring fits best on your finger. Then from there you go back to the website and you pick that particular ring out. Or if you know your actual ring size and are confident, then you can just simply order that size up front. Again, pretty much the same as every other company in the space. What is not the same though is the battery life. The battery life claim here is 7 days, but that spec is super interesting. If you go to the incredibly fine print in the list of like literally 70 different things at the bottom of the press release, they note that the battery life there of 7 days is for the largest size rings, the rings size 12 and 13, which have a 22 milliamp hour battery. However, the smallest rings, ring sizes 5, 6, and 7, have a 17 milliamp hour battery and last up to 6 days, versus the 8, 9, 10, 11 sizes have an 18.5 milliamp hour battery. I definitely appreciate Samsung being clear on that, at least in the tiny text down below. It is kind of a bit of a neat geekery aside as to the different sizes of the batteries in each one. Now, they are including a charging case in there, which I know obviously they're going to include some sort of charging thing, but I do like the case design similar to how you would charge a pair of headphones, where it's like totally secured in there. If you compare that to the Oura Ring charger where you put the ring on top, this isn't great for travel. Totally fine at night or something like that to like stick it next to you, but not great if you're trying to charge on the go. So I like Samsung's approach there. Of course, the entire point of this ring is to measure like your holistic life from an activity and energy and sleep standpoint. Rings tend to be really focused on sleep and less so on workouts. In the case of Samsung, they're covering all those three things there. And again, other companies cover all those three things, but they really do focus on the sleep side of it. In terms of the metrics you're going to get heart rate and sleep and activity, HRV, all the kind of same stuff that you get from, well, pretty much every other device out there, including Samsung's own devices. But they are launching a new energy score feature. This energy score is essentially a readiness score, again, very similar to what we've seen from Fitbit, Google, Garmin, Paul, I mean, really basically everyone out there. And it looks at a bunch of different data to give you a score each morning and then give you guidance, little tidbits throughout the day. I'd say those tidbits are probably one of the differences between what they are doing and some of their competitors doing. Most of their competitors give you tidbits at the beginning of the day for that score, and that score does change throughout the day, but they don't tend to give you more guidance throughout the day for the most part. There are some minor exceptions there, but here they're going to give you tidbits throughout the day. Now, of course, I'll be testing all of this stuff in individual in-depth reviews here pretty shortly, so stay tuned for all that and whack that subscribe button so you don't miss out on all those reviews and finding out whether all these promises actually hold true. Now, Samsung noted that all this data is being pulled from both the sensors on there as well as algorithms on top of that, and it's part of the new Health AI suite. The one catch, though, is that Health AI suite will only work on a Samsung phone. And this is where we get to one thing that's a bit unclear right now. On Samsung's own site, they list that the Samsung Galaxy Ring is only compatible with Samsung phones. However, they told different journalists that it's compatible with any Android phone as long as you have the Samsung Health app on there. I suspect we're going to find out for realsies in about 2 weeks or so, but for now, just keep that in mind that it does, at least according to the specs, technically require a Samsung phone to be paired with it. Samsung also noticed something cool, which is that if you have both a Samsung Ring as well as a Galaxy Watch, it'll actually do a bit of a sensor fusion there, where it'll combine those two things together to get the highest quality or highest fidelity data at any given point in time. For example, during a workout, where maybe optical heart rate is struggling on one device but not the other, it should go ahead and pull both of those data sources together behind the scenes for the energy score later on. However, on the inverse side of things, it is worthwhile noting that the Samsung Galaxy Ring will not support sleep apnea. That's something that is being supported on the Galaxy Watches starting, it was announced, we'll get to it in just a second here, but that is not coming to the Samsung Galaxy Ring. So again, keep that in mind. Still, I am keen to check this out. I think one of the things that's notable is that when Oura, their primary competitor, started years ago, sleep tracking wasn't great among really any wearables out there. But the landscape has changed quite a bit over this time period, and a lot of wearables are not just good, but they're very, very good at sleep tracking, and in most cases they're still good enough even for like the second tier, second rate wearables. And while Aura has expanded into lots of different areas in terms of workout tracking and period prediction and plenty of other things, it does have that subscription piece. And given that the Ring prices are the same prices here as Samsung, I suspect this is probably going to really hurt Aura, at least for Android users, or maybe even just for Samsung phone users. Still, I'm definitely keen to give it out. The only way Samsung could screw this up is if it's not accurate, and it's not like Samsung has a history at all of having inaccurate wearable and health data, but we'll see. Anyways, the next new thing is the Galaxy Watch Ultra. This essentially takes the place of the previous Galaxy Watch Pro, but rebrands it and upscales it a bit. The first thing to note is it is priced at $649, and it comes in one size, a 47mm size, but does have 3 different titanium colors, and does have sapphire glass on top of it. Like the Apple Watch Ultra, it's only available in an LTE edition, so an LTE only edition. In fact, you're going to see a lot of similarities here between the Apple Watch Ultra and the Galaxy Watch Ultra. They're virtually identical across the board. I heard one person describe it as basically the Apple Watch Ultra for Android users. Still, I wouldn't overthink that line too much because these companies, both Apple, Samsung, Google, etc., copy from each other all the time. There are plenty of features that Apple copies from Samsung and from Google and vice versa. This is just kind of paying it forward or paying it back, however you want to look at it. One of the first features that's a pretty good example of that copying is the emergency siren, an 85 decibel siren that you can go ahead and trigger if you're out in the middle of the woods and people can find you. So that's something we've seen, of course, in the past on the Apple Watch Ultra. Another example being the waterproofing spec, 10 ATM, or basically 100 meter waterproofing. From a display standpoint, it has a 3000 nit display, again, the same as the Apple Watch Ultra 2. I'd also point out, just like I pointed out in Apple's case, that is totally overkill. 1000 nit displays for an AMOLED display are totally fine in bright sunny conditions. 2000 nits were more than enough, and 3000 nits continue to be specs for the sake of specs. I'd rather have battery life from all these companies. Speaking of that battery life, it's kind of funny. So they mentioned 2 different specs here. One being 100 hours in regular power saving mode, another being 48 hours in workout power saving mode. They also technically mentioned the exact milliamp hours as well, but they don't mention anywhere on any site, any specifications, any press release, anything, the actual duration of how long the battery lasts in normal mode. So we'll have to find out about that at some point down the road here. My guess is probably the same as the Apple Watch Ultra as well, which is generally about 2 days or so, give or take. But still, that workout power saving mode is roughly in the ballpark of what Apple's doing, and the same goes for the regular power saving mode as well. Again, there's lots of toggles that you can change in those power saving modes that will dramatically shift those different battery life expectancies, so just keep that in mind. Now, from a hardware standpoint, the processor is a new 3nm processor, which Samsung says is 3 times faster than the past. And then on the GPS side, they've added a new dual frequency or multi-band GPS chipset. So it'd be really cool to see that. That's an area that Samsung has been getting notably better the last few years from the GPS accuracy standpoint. This should really help them quite a bit. But again, it really comes down to antenna design when you look at GPS and accuracy in sport watches. It's not just about the chipset. Likewise, they've also added a new optical heart rate sensor. Again, an area that we'll have to see whether or not Samsung can finally deliver and stick the landing on an accurate optical heart rate sensor in their watches. Every year they promise improvements, and every year we are collectively disappointed. But the most interesting stuff here is on the software side. First up, it's the first watch to feature Wear OS 5, becoming a bit of a pattern of Samsung being the first watch each year to have the latest Google Wear OS platform. And then a lot of the other changes that we see here beyond Wear OS really are on the sporting side. For example, in cycling, they're adding FTP, or functional threshold power prediction. This is roughly the highest power output you can do for an hour. But Samsung here says they can do a basically calculation of that in just a mere 4 minutes, which would be incredibly impressive from a cycling accuracy, FTP accuracy standpoint. Most tests out there, like on the very low end, are about 20 minutes or so, and then they go up to usually an hour, which is basically the time frame that you're delivering. So I'm really keen to see if they can do this correctly. Apple added in FTP recognition about a year or so ago, and it's been kind of not awesome for me. It's not horrible, but it's not awesome. This is a whole different level of an algorithm. So again, we'll have to see there. That also means they're recording power meter data as well, because this requires a Bluetooth power meter. Likewise, they've added in triathlon support or multi-sport mode, which is cool, and they've also added a new running race mode to compete against your past records. Again, all things that Apple has pretty much done in the last year or so with their Apple Watch Ultra. But there are some things here that Samsung is doing that Apple is not. For example, they're adding sleep apnea, something they announced earlier this year for the watches, and it's finally coming true here in the Galaxy Watch Ultra. This is the first FDA-approved watch to detect that. And again, we're seeing it here not just on the Galaxy Watch Ultra, but also on the Galaxy Watch 7 as well. And finally, the most important difference between Apple and Samsung here is the fact that Samsung is doing this for quite a bit cheaper. $649 for the price as opposed to $799 on the Apple Watch Ultra. But this isn't the only watch that Samsung announced today. They also announced the Galaxy Watch 7, which is pretty much just like last year's Galaxy Watch. There's some very minor tweaks to the outside exterior styling of it, but the good news though is it gets virtually all the software features of the Ultra, as well as getting the new dual-band GPS as well. And the thing only costs $299, so quite a bit cheaper than the Ultra Edition here. The pricing then goes from there upwards depending on you want the larger size or LTE, etc. Now, all these things are available for order today, arriving on either July 19th or 24th, depending on your particular region. The Ring, however, is a bit more limited in availability. I'm only seeing it on the US site right now and not on the Netherlands site where I live here. Perhaps some other countries in Europe have it as well. I couldn't find any list of which countries get it, so maybe it's just US only for now, versus the Galaxy Watch Ultra as well as the Watch 7 seems to be the usual slate of Galaxy countries in terms of which units have that. So then a very quick recap of the device options you have. $299 for the Galaxy Watch 7, $399 for the Ring, $649 for the Galaxy Watch Ultra, in all of which I will test here shortly, diving through what works, what doesn't work, all the usual things you know and come to expect from my AMP reviews. Thus, definitely whack that subscribe button at the bottom there, that way you get those reviews, the ding-dong YouTube bell, as soon as they drop. With that, have a good one.